Understandably, many people have asked me, so what's the solution? How do I get out of this gang stalking situation? And in a perfect world, I would love to be able to say, if you do A, B, and C and call this 1-800 number, they're going to assist you and walk you through the process and everything's going to be okay. But unfortunately, in my experience, that's not how it goes. I am still navigating my own situation and am waiting on long overdue justice myself. So, what I can do is control what's in my control and utilize my abilities and what's available to me to communicate and to shed light on what's being done in the dark by these corrupt groups, these crime rings, these gang stalking rings, these white collar crime groups, and in hopes of bringing cohesive thought and ordered words that accurately describe what's happening in these schemes to bring awareness to those in the field of law, the justice system, insurance agents, medical staff, and the public in general, because the more information and awareness is put out there, hopefully it will lead to resources and solutions to follow. And so today I'd like to shed some light on 3 common scams that these groups will participate in. And the first is the honey trap. And this is where they send in a person to play a role, to be a character in the victim's life, to be a false love interest, to pretend that they have meaningful interest in the victim and want a future with them in order to get close to the victim. And this is done for a couple of reasons. Number one, they are to serve as a handler of the victim, to get close enough to the victim and get the victim to trust them, to be able to influence their decisions and their habits. And they're obtaining information from the victim. What is their daily routine? Who are their contacts? Where do they bank? Can they access any personal documents of the victim? And meanwhile, the whole time through this false relationship, the character playing the role is reporting back to the group everything they're learning. So it's an intentional scheme playing upon the emotions of the victim and causing them to feel like they can be vulnerable and share information. And meanwhile, that information is just being taken back to the crime group. And that scammer will go so far as to take photos and video footage of the victim with the intent of later blackmailing that victim if any of this ever comes out or they try to speak up. And it's really exploitive, and some of the scammers will try to introduce victims to drugs they've never been involved in before and then take photographs of it, just go to far lengths to utilize their closeness to that victim to exploit them and to violate their privacy. Meanwhile, everything they're saying and doing is being reported back to this crime group. Number 2, the hidden court case scam. And this is where the victim is the main character in a court case, yet they're not allowed to have input or participate. They're completely excluded. They're not served. They may not even know what's happening. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, the group is trying to get the victim declared as incompetent for health reasons or mental health reasons. They'll provide false medical records. They'll get false testimony, people to commit perjury, whether it be a medical doctor or therapist that the victim may not have even met before. And then what happens is this crime group will be able to obtain a legal court order that gives them conservatorship or guardianship over the victim, and then they can access the victim's bank accounts, move money, access their bank statements to monitor and track the victim. In a guardianship case, they can influence their medical decisions, control where the victim lives, use that as a means to abuse the victim. And it's quite diabolical and dangerous, the lengths that they'll go to, and so difficult for a victim if A, they don't know what's happening, but B, to unravel all the layers of fraud that have been committed because they're doing it in such a way that it looks legal, like they're doing what's in the best interest of the victim. This victim's incapacitated, so we're helping because we're a concerned family. We love them, so we want to oversee their finances to make sure everything's okay. And they may portray the victim as having substance issues, and we need to have control of their finances so they don't use the money for that. And obviously interference with service is at play here. They may provide a wrong address to the court, or even court staff may be involved in not serving the victim, and there could be interception of their mail. And in a probate case, they'll use we don't know where the victim is, we don't know where the beneficiary is, or they're homeless and we can't serve them. Meanwhile, the group is the one that made them homeless, and they definitely know where that victim is because they're stalking the heck out of them. And, meanwhile, a victim has been excluded as a beneficiary and is being shown to be somebody who has no interest in participating in a case, is failing to show up at hearings, or clearly is not stable enough to handle these resources because they can't even show up to court. Meanwhile, they have no idea this is occurring behind the scenes. And the players are knowledgeable in law, in medical documentation. They know how to utilize the system. And it shows the depth of corruption and the assets and resources available to those involved, and their web of networking and players they can utilize, like, hey, will you scratch my back and I'll scratch yours, help me get this to go through, and we'll just violate the due process rights of this victim and kind of slide this through. And lastly, financial scams. The group will commit financial crimes in the victim's name using their social security number and make it appear that the victim is committing fraud, whether it's false PPP loans or insurance fraud, making false claims to claim insurance funds. And then they'll go to law enforcement and say, look, this victim is committing all this financial fraud. And to law enforcement, it looks like, okay, the dots connect, this victim is scamming people. Meanwhile, it's the group that's been doing it in the victim's name, and the victim may not even be aware. In my case, my email was hacked, and a lot of unlawful activity was available when you have access to someone's devices, to their personal information, to their communications. And my scammer, in my case, one of the primary scammers, was also creating fake social media profiles in the images of celebrities and collecting funds from fans as if that's celebrity. So they'll go pretty far. They may even create fake GoFundMe accounts in the victim's name to collect funds, and they'll open bank accounts in the victim's name and then access those resources. So I bring this to awareness because it's important to know that these kinds of things do happen, and it's clear that there's a lot of knowledge of systems behind these schemes, a lot of planning, a lot of fraud, and a lot of plotting to make these things effective.